And thank you so much for joining us live. This is www.techmake.tv. My name is Tonio. We do appreciate all the time that you're taking with us. Today we do have a special guest that we're going to be discussing with an in-depth as far as the Zimbabwean political discourse is concerned. We're going to be talking with a special guest joining us live online right now. A man who is not a stranger to Zimbabwean politics. Many people have really known him for a very long time. He was the former Minister of Higher and Tertiary, and also he was much more popular as the Minister of Information. And today we've got him, and a lot of things have happened till we are here today. Today we are so much excited and honored to have you, Professor Jonathan Moyo. Thank you so much for taking your time to join us live right here.
It is my pleasure. You're welcome.
Right, Professor, you owed us this interview, I can safely say 3 years back. Today, to most of us, we are still in 2017, and we are going to drag you all the way back. We wanted to speak with you 2017, just after the Zimbabwe military coup, or should we call it a state-assisted, a military-assisted intervention that happened in November in Zimbabwe. So a lot of Zimbabweans wanted to really hear from you. I know we've been trying to get in touch with you so that we have this discussion. And finally, here we are today. Thank you so much for granting us this opportunity. Yes, can you still hear me?
Yes, I had lost you for a bit, but now I just heard you.
Professor, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, right. So let me just shoot straight into my first question. The November 27 incident, we saw a lot was happening, and particularly you even still up until now, you have a Twitter still pinned on your Twitter post where your house was vandalized. There were bullets. You perpetually survived an arsenal that was sent against you and your family. Most Zimbabweans really want to know. These were things that were not publicized, written, or broadcast. As far as those events were concerned, we only saw thousands of Zimbabweans marching around the streets. But at the back of this, there was a lot of things that were really going on. And one of those things that really transpired was the use of strong military against people like you. If you may explain to us exactly what was happening behind the scenes while most Zimbabweans were in the streets, specifically at your house.
Well, I cannot convey or recast for you what was happening behind the scenes as if I was the one in charge of what was happening behind the scenes. But I do take note that, in fact, you are asking me specifically, as you said, about what was happening at our home. But otherwise, generally, I can recall for you what happened as we were at the receiving end of the goings on. In fact, as it was happening, most of it was not clear. It became clear or clearer after the fact, and even quite scary when I got to know some of the things that were happening. But the long and short of it really is that the so-called intervention or military assisted transition was first and foremost, for us to understand what was happening, it was first and foremost a military coup, an ouster of the constitutional government, or a power grab led by Emerson Mnangagwa. Now, while 3.5 years later, we can all see that some of the people who led this coup or power grab are clueless. It is important to start by recognizing what it was, and in particular, to take into account that they were not as clueless in grabbing the power as they have been in running the government. It is very clear that there was a lot of planning behind what happened on that day. And the goings on of that day were a product of that planning. And it is important to understand what happened on the 15th of November 2017 by understanding or unpacking the planning that took place. One thing that we can look back and say, oh, they kind of pulled the first one, and they were, for want of a better word, smart in pulling a first one, is that they purported not to be targeting President Mugabe. They purported to be targeting the so-called criminals around him. And within those criminals, they specifically targeted the former First Lady. They sold a narrative not only to Zimbabweans, but also to the neighbors, to SADC, to the African Union, and to the international community. They alleged that because, as everyone could see, President Mugabe was old, his wife has usurped constitutional power, has effectively taken over Mugabe's power unconstitutionally, and Mugabe's wife is making decisions, cabinet decisions, state decisions, either assisted by these five or together with these five. And everyone who had that narrative, that the first lady, the former first lady. Well, these five, let's see, and I hope the five is a correct number. Xavier Kasukwere, Patrick Joao, Ignatius Chombo, Walter Mzembi, and Jonathan Moyo are the five who were targeted specifically. And you know, the evidence that these were the targeted ones is in the public domain now. But they claimed that she had taken over with these five. And any normal person hearing that story would have been alarmed. I mean, the evidence that the president was old was common cause. You didn't need the special assistance of a rocket scientist to see that he was old. It was common cause. But they abused that fact and took advantage of the period just before the events of November 15. In particular, they took advantage of the youth interface rallies at which the former First Lady would feature prominently and say things which were, in political terms, anticipating the conference that was coming in December, the party, and some of the things were hostage to fortune. I mean, the sort of things that were being said at the interface rallies, even at the time, but more so in hindsight, were obviously ill-advised, especially within the kind of atmosphere that was prevailing. They took advantage of that and claimed that this was evidence she was taking over. And in particular, the church gathering at the was it National Sports Stadium? It was Rufaro Stadium, eh?
Yeah.
That was an unfortunate event. If you wanted to single out one event that was a bundle of misfortune and a total disaster, it is that one. Together with the dismissal.
Why that one is an unfortunate event?
Well, the optics were not right, let alone what was said there. The optics gave hostage to fortune by painting the First Lady in the role of, from an optics point of view, a head of state.
Yeah.
And they said, there you are. This is effectively, they said what she was doing there on that was a confirmation of the position she now was in. She was just
were you
acting.
not part of the advisors of this whole incidents that were happening, specifically these youth rallies? Were you not part of the advisors of all these happenings?
But why would anyone be an advisor to the youth things when they were there themselves? The people were organizing. And in what capacity would one be an advisor in the sort of thing? I mean, you know, in ZANU-PF, or at least that time, much less so now, we can see that the traditional ZANU-PF structures are conspicuous these days by their absence. But in ZANU-PF, the women, in terms of the Women's League, and the youth, as Youth League, and the war veterans, these are the commissariat legs and voices of ZANU-PF. You can't run them. They are notorious for being unreliable, for being unpredictable, for doing their own things. And if you know anything of value about ZANU-PF, you must stay away from those organizations. Stay away from the Women's League, stay away from the war veterans, stay away from the Youth League. So some of us, I certainly kept a distance, maintain peace with them, greet them, hello comrades, what. But don't be with them and inside with them, don't plot with them, because they will call a press conference and make scandalous allegations about you without any notice. I mean, did you not see early in 2017 when one of those wings, the Women's League, but with quite some significant participation of the Youth League, orchestrated a vote of no confidence on the National Commissar, and purported to have organized 9 provinces that they'd set as provincial coordinating committees, and expressed vote of no confidence against the National Commissar. The National Commissar is supposed to be bigger than this. The National Commissar is supposed to organize this. and the national commissar was Comrade Kasukwere.
Mhm.
And when people start saying that either Kasukwere, me, and these other colleagues who were the ones running this, I think they either just seeking to score cheap points, or they are actually dull, that they don't understand the Zimbabwean politics. Because there you had an unprecedented situation in recent years, where the sitting national commissar, who is supposed to use the leagues to mobilize for the party, was targeted by one of the leagues. And 9 provinces, it's only my former province, which kind of joined the and then Bulawayo stood out. But Map North also ended up having put that vote of no confidence. 9. Bulawayo being the odd one out. And how does a person who has been a product of a vote of no confidence by 9 provinces, wanting him to step down and step aside as national commissar, be the one who is organizing the same league? Does that make sense to anybody? And by November, when the coup takes place, the national commissar was still under fire. And he was under pressure, with people suggesting that, in fact, either he should be removed or be made a full-time commissar and not be in cabinet. So when people say, "Oh, you're not performing, and we want someone else," and this is coming from one of the leagues. In fact, let us be clear. It was actually coming from all of the leagues, the 3 that I've said. The national commissar was not having the support of the youth league at that time. And certainly the women's league was targeting him. And we know that because of their association with the military, the war veterans were also targeting him. Just think back to that time. Now, they were saying, you either step aside and out, or you become a full-time commissar out of cabinet. I don't think that really, if we want to be rational, that is the background of a key advisor to the secretary of the Women's League. For me, it is nonsensical. If you were to really unpack what was going on in ZANU-PF in 2017, the commissar was at his weakest right from the beginning of the year. And he did not regain the strength that he had when he started, because he was under attack.
And the notion that power was slowly shifting to the First Lady. It seems the slogan hearing Munwese Kunamai was now very popular and almost in an advanced stage, to a point that ZANU-PF was now even proposing to alter the constitution so that they make a vice president female, and that was an issue that had been tabled before ZANU-PF, so that they altered the constitution. Was this not at the highest advanced level of making sure that the game was over, and they were really ready and preparing for the First Lady to take over, specifically with also the constitutional amendment being in progress?
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard what you said was the basis for the constitutional amendment, but you will recall that before 2014, the Congress in 2014, the ZANU-PF constitution provided for 2 vice presidents, one of whom was reserved for women. until 2014. That was the position from 2004 to 2014. But in 2014, the constitution was amended to just remove that clause, which was reserving one of the two posts for vice president for women. But in 2017, there was a slight twist. The push was for an amendment to say that ZANU-PF should have 3 vice presidents. One who is a woman, or at least one of them a woman. And quite clearly, that push was coming from the Women's League. And yes, it was coming from supporters of the incumbent at the time.
Was it then not clear? If the push was coming from the Women's League, as you allege, was it not clear that this was obviously a strategy to make sure that there is a place for First Lady to become part of the Presidium? Was this not a clear game plan? Which obviously may have...
Yes. I mean, it was. And the question there becomes, so what? It definitely was. But so what? I mean, that's what the women were pushing for, those aligned to the First Lady. What I think is, certainly we have to keep in mind this issue, so what? What was wrong, in my view, in the context of what we are talking about, is the presumption that it was the so-called G40 or the people who were surrounding, allegedly, the president, who were pushing for that, because that is a fallacy, that is false. The political commissar at the time was a victim of that movement. How does a victim of the movement become the champion of the very same process that is threatening his position? That's the only, you see, for me, the fact that there was a push for an amendment to the constitution to have 3 vice presidents is a political reality that we all needed to deal with, and no one ever asked some of us what we felt about that position. And you must remember that already there was a view, a very strong view, that even having 2 vice presidents was a problem. But we know the history to that. It was directly linked to the Unity Accord, the 1987 Accord. Now, the argument for now a 3rd one was frankly preposterous, and it was not supported by a lot of people. But the fact that people made that argument was not criminal. That's what politics is all about. You know, if you are in politics, you should play politics. You do not argue against that argument by bringing in 1945 military tanks, bazookas, and AK-47s. That's what is absolutely unacceptable. And you cannot criminalize those who hold that view. Those who felt that there must be a 3rd vice president needed to be persuaded away from that position. And you don't persuade them through guns. And when you are disagreeing with that view, you don't pretend that you are the only one who is disagreeing, and that everyone else who may be using different strategies to distance themselves from that point of view supports that view or are champions of that view. And my point to you is that, you know, we hear of a common cultural thing that if you want to kill a dog, you allege that it has rabies. What basically the coup makers did was to single out certain unpopular positions of the moment, some which were true positions, some which were presumed to be positions, and say these are G40 positions, and say the G40 are the key advisors for that position, and to ignore what was actually happening. That's one thing that was wrong. In order to justify, you see, the people who carried out a coup in 2017 had attempted to carry out coups many times before. They'd failed, but they had, in a kind of reflective way, decided that they were going to ensure that they succeed President Mugabe, come rain or shine. In 2008, they took that decision. And they were busy planning and doing things throughout that period with the eye to the succession. And they were going to do whatever it takes by any means available and or necessary to succeed him. Unfortunately, President Mugabe himself did not come up with a succession plan.
Well, was that not part of the succession plan, Prof? When you get your wife to become the vice president, and obviously the constitution says once the president leaves power, as we all agree that he was of old age. Many people allege that obviously Grace was going to be the vice president, then she was going to be set ready to take over as the next president. Especially when the president cuts off his term before the next election. A lot of people thought and think that this was the strategy to easily get Grace Mugabe to become the next president, because once she was the vice president, the constitution was already being amended, and automatically once the president leaves office before term expires, obviously a vice president on the part was going to take over, and automatically Grace Mugabe was going to be the president. What is your thought to this narrative?
The only problem with what you're saying is it sounds like a term paper for an undergraduate in the first term, writing about what was going to happen. A very interesting term paper, but it has nothing to do with the reality that was actually happening. I just wish that, for me, one amusing, if not also sad thing about the political discourse in Zimbabwe is that a lot of people say things with a lot of bombast and confidence, which are completely meaningless, false, which are not based in reality. Politics is about what happens. Politics is the interaction of human beings. It is much more helpful and wiser to describe what was actually happening as opposed to what could happen or what some people were speculating. I respect speculations, but I separate them from what was actually happening. I am aware of what you are just saying, for example, because a lot of people were saying that. But was Grace a vice president? No. Did Grace have high chances of being a vice president if everyone had played their role in ZANU-PF? That would not happen. There was no possibility of that happening. But because things started collapsing toward the end, and because you had some people who were fixated and who wanted to block any other likely development that would kill their plan that had been in place as far back, at least in systematic ways, as 2008. Because of that, any small shadow thing was given a reality that it did not deserve, because it was perceived to be threatening the plan. I just want you to appreciate this point once more. The plan to succeed President Mugabe, or let me put it even in starker terms, the Mnangagwa's succession plan was not crafted on November 6, 2017, or just after November 6, 2016. It was not crafted as a reaction to November 6, 2017. Certainly, it was not crafted on November 13, 2017, when commander of the Defense Forces gave that famous press statement, if you want, or ultimatum, which is more of what it was. And it's not what unfolded in the evening and night of November 14 to become a full-blown coup the next day. It's not. I mean, anyone who wants to, and it's certainly not, it had nothing, it was not triggered or became a reality from June 1, when June 1, 2017, when the youth interface rallies started. Certainly not. By the time the youth interface rallies start, by the time Mnangagwa is dismissed on the 6th of November, by the time Chiwenga holds his presser on the 13th, and indeed then on the 15th, that had been a long planned. These became the opportunistic moments for it to become full-blown. So those of you who have theories that are based on what happened in 2017, whether you peg that from the interface rallies or from the dismissal or to the presser, you are completely wrong. Even in the GNU, as the GNU unfolded, the coup was in the making.
With such,
and I think this is
why. Okay, maybe let me allow you to finish off before I throw this one. You can finish off.
No, you can. I think you can interrupt. It's important. I don't mind being interrupted. Yeah. With such intelligence, so why was the coup not stopped?
Why was the coup unstopped? You are talking of years behind.
Why was what?
Like, why was the coup not then stopped? Why were there no any mitigation strategies as far as this development? You seem to be very much clear that it has been in the pipelines for a long time, yet on ground nothing was done to mitigate such a serious
and
why?
Well, for me. Sorry, some of your words were lost there. I beg your pardon.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm asking.
I can.
Okay, so I'm asking if there were such threats of national security threats that were supposed to have been taken seriously, how come there were not any mitigation plans that were done from all these years, as far as 2008 up until 2017? This is almost like 9 years down the line. How come we did not see any serious mitigation plans towards this? Only up until the end of November 2017, we saw some actions towards that. Why was the government, such a heavily trained and sophisticated intelligence, not doing anything about this?
Well, I think this is a fair question you're asking, except I'm not sure that the assumptions of the question are correct. You just said toward the end there that nothing was done until the very end to mitigate this. I'm not aware of anything that was done even at the very end to mitigate this. I'm unaware of that. I think what we saw at the end was...
Okay. So why was the government not doing anything? I'll substantiate what they did to mitigate in November 17. You are saying they didn't do anything. Why would such a government not do anything? You have a national threat. Why would you not do anything from 2008 to 2018? You were part of this government.
Who? Me?
Yes, you were part of the government as well, and the president himself. Why was nothing done against such a national security?
Well, a national security. You see, you are presenting the scenario as if this was an external threat to the government, when in fact this was the government planning a coup against itself.
It was an internal threat. It was an internal threat against the government. You would still call it a
yeah.
national threat. A national threat doesn't need to be always external. It can be internal when it's being done from inside.
No, I'm appreciating. I fully appreciate your question. Except I'm inviting you to understand that this was being done by significant components of the government across the three arms and incorporating quite a broad base in civil society, media, even churches. There were churches praying for the coup. I think for you to really understand why nothing was done, you must appreciate that those who would have needed to do it were unwilling to do that. They were part of the coup. They were using intelligence to consolidate their position. And for me, from a political point of view, because at some point I raised this issue with the former and late president, and I raised it with him on a number of occasions. Nothing was done, and I understood then, and I still understand this now, that nothing was done because nothing could have been done, and nothing could have been done because, number one, the very fact that the key architects of the coup were the president's number one confidant, the most trusted people. It was not possible, certainly for me, to convince him that the people you have been with for 52 years as your right-hand man and many others for a long but lesser period as your most trusted men and women are in fact plotting to overthrow you. It was not possible for an outsider like me in that scheme of their long years of relationship, or Emafikizolo was not seen as a hardcore traditional ZANU.
Was this a trust issue? Because I know there was a blue ocean strategy as well.
I don't know. Well, yeah, it's a fact. It's a historical fact. Did that historical fact give rise to trust issues? Yes, no doubt about that. The President Mugabe, no doubt, from an objective political analysis, he overstayed his tenure, overstayed his popularity, support from the people, and reached a time. And it's one thing for a leader to overstay their leadership elasticity. It happens, and we've seen it happen in many other situations. I think by the same token, we can say that Julius Nyerere overstayed his zone of governance or leadership. But it's when you do that, you can overstay with a plan to exit. Julius Nyerere overstayed, but he had a Nyerere exit, and he took that exit. And by so doing, avoided the sort of calamity which visited President Mugabe. For me, I wish President Mugabe had accepted, as he did, that he had a long relationship of trust with Emerson Mnangagwa as his right-hand man, and Emerson Mnangagwa was, without doubt, Mugabe's right-hand man, as both of them used to boast about that. It is a historical fact. But I wish President Mugabe, while recognizing that, should have also come up with an exit plan, a succession plan, a transitional plan. And I wish he had invested in that transitional plan. What was catastrophic was not the overstay, because that was a reality in front of all of us, in and outside ZANU-PF. What was catastrophic was the lack of a plan. You see, you can't be in power and behave as if you are immortal, and as if nothing can happen in between. Especially leave it like that to the 11th hour. For me, vultures pounced because there was a vacuum. The rule that a vacuum will be occupied not by something good, but by anything possible. That rule is what threw Zimbabwe in a mess. Because if President Mugabe, the only thing that would have prevented the coup was the existence of an alternative plan.
What plan would you have, Professor, during that time? I clearly remember you in one of these statements that you did while you were still Minister of Information. You surely, and you certainly say that surely Emerson Mnangagwa is not an automatic vice president after. It's not an automatic president after President Mugabe. This was one of the reasons that actually caused fissures with you and Mnangagwa, where you were caught, where you were caught on record saying that he's surely not the next successor to Mugabe. Who was your preferred successor during that time? If there was any succession plan to be done, what would you have preferred?
Well, I was correct. Even as I sit here, I'm happy to associate myself with that view, which I expressed in December 2014, soon after the Congress. I just wanted to make clear then that Emerson Mnangagwa's appointment, it was not even an election, appointment as vice president did not make him, the appointment, I said, was not an anointment. But that was not to eliminate him as a possible successor, of course not. But it was simply to say to those who were jumping up and down that from a political point of view, his appointment is not an anointment, because to be president of Zimbabwe, or of ZANU-PF even at that time, before the coup, now the coup has changed all that, you needed to be elected, not to be anointed or appointed president even. And you know what? I'm happy to answer your question, who was my choice. But I don't want you to run away with the imagination that therefore, because this was your choice, it means X, Y, Z in terms of the politics of the moment. Because if we play fair, the one who succeeds must be the one who commands the majority of support in the first instance from the party, and in the second from the country.